Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's Coffee with Craig. This is where we here at the Firearms Policy Coalition try to bring you conversations about what's going on in the news, what's going on in politics, what's going on in culture relating to firearms and the Second Amendment. We very much appreciate you guys tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing these video feeds so that your friends can become part of the conversation. Now, we all know, getting into today's topic, we all know that the anti-gun left, they're really big on the idea of talking about how only here in the United States do we have the level of gun violence or violence that you see. And they always like to compare us to quote-unquote developed countries. And then with that, what they generally tend to do is they tend to specifically cherry pick countries that have strict gun laws, but at the same time have relatively, and I say relatively because they like to talk about how the numbers relate, but then have relatively low gun violence numbers. They don't talk about a lot of countries that otherwise they would consider to be developed, because they're afraid that those numbers, it won't fit the narrative. And there's one country, the country of Brazil, that is considering getting rid of their gun control. They have very strict gun control, but they're considering getting rid of it because the violence has gotten so bad in their country that they've realized that gun control, well, it just does not appear to be the answer.
For the deaths of 116 people every day. The report, called Violence Map 2015, calculated that guns killed 42,416 people in Brazil in 2012, 5 people per hour, the highest since this trend began in 1980. The findings show nearly 60% were under the age of 29, and black people were 142% more likely to be killed by firearms than a white person. Many people believe the main problem is millions of unregulated, illegal weapons in the country.
There are so many legal weapons in Brazil because the borders allow them to flow into the country. Also, the authorities focus on regulating legal purchases to such an extent that they are most impossible to buy. It can take up a year. The new laws didn't change a thing, and as you have seen, crime is up.
Strict checks and balances, including passing multiple tests and justifying to the authorities why a person needs a weapons license, means many Brazilians turn to the black market.
Brazil tightened its gun laws in 2003, a move this study argues saved around 160,000 lives. But the number of gun-related deaths here hasn't fallen, and many believe they should have the right to carry a firearm.
In 2005, 2/3 of Brazilians voted against a nationwide ban on the sale of arms and ammunition, and a new movement to relax gun ownership restrictions is now gaining momentum. But many experts believe this is not the answer to reducing gun-related deaths.
We need
the country's existing gun laws to be implemented and checks properly enforced, with better infrastructure to stop arms from coming into country, and once seized, guns must be stopped from getting back into circulation. Poorer communities also feel vulnerable to crime, and this also needs to be addressed to reduce weapons in circulation.
The study concludes that strict laws should be seen as a vital first step to reducing gun crime, and that further reforms, including amnesties and information campaigns, are also needed. But for now, the vicious circle continues, and while the number of gun crimes remains high, people are unlikely to give up their weapons. Ben Taverner, Press TV, São Paulo.
See, now, what's interesting about this is you heard a lot of the same things that you see happen here in the United States. In particular, what you find is that when gun laws are really strict, they're still able to import them. There will be, and I guarantee you, if we ever got to the point where we had the level of gun control on a national basis that they have there in Brazil, guess what's going to wind up happening? You're going to see a black market for firearms, because guess what? Criminals still get guns. Kind of funny how that happens, huh? What I also noticed was interesting, and by the way, that was a story that was done in 2015. Now, the number of murders was at 42,000 then. Now, there's a recent story in Bloomberg where they're actually talking about this. It's up to 60,000. 60,000 people have been killed. This is gun crime, period, there in Brazil. And this is why they're showing a huge increase in the support for the relaxing of restrictions on firearms, and an increase in the ability of increasing the ability for individuals to be able to keep and bear arms there in Brazil, because things have gotten so out of control. And what they're also refusing to tell you is that, you know, there's a national movement there, and I think there's one conservative politician who's running for president. I think he gets it. And here's a quote from him. He's talking about how the criminal is armed with a high-powered weapon as the citizen tries to hide. That's what's happening here in these United States, in places where what's kind of funny is, well, not funny, but interesting is, and this is where the similarities are, you look at where these crimes are being committed, and mostly they're in urban areas, controlled mostly by left-wing politicians who implement very, very strict firearms laws that are adhered to only by the law-abiding. And so as a result, the people who wind up paying the price are those very same people. Because guess what? The criminals ignore the crime. I mean, ignore the law. They just flat out ignore it. And so the idea of going somewhere and getting a gun somewhere, whether it's across state lines or whether it's across federal lines, they don't care about that, because they know that they can go get a gun. Because and what makes it harder or easier for them is that they know that chances are that the person upon which they're going to perpetrate their crime is going to be unarmed. Nowhere is this better seen than in the city of, say, Chicago, where, and this was something that came up in another story that I was reading. In the city of Chicago, it's so bad that Navy medics are embedded in Chicago hospitals in order to get battlefield experience. That's right. The Navy is sending medics to Chicago because it's like there's no place in the United States where they can go where it's easier for them to experience battlefield-like conditions when dealing with and treating the wounded. Because they see they're dealing with the actual implementation. And folks, if you get absolutely nothing out of this story, then it needs to be this: that gun control doesn't work. Gun control only controls people, and the only people it controls are law-abiding people. And what you see happening now in Brazil is that many people have decided, screw the law. I'm going to do what I'm going to do because I have to protect myself and my family. And so they have a tremendous black market there of firearms. Here in the United States, you have people who say, well, we don't want to take away the Second Amendment, but yet you do everything possible to restrict and limit the ability of individuals be able to exercise their constitutionally enumerated right. And what do? You attempt to make victims out of them. That may not be what you're attempting to do. That may not be your intention, but that is the result of the policies that you folks keep trying to push and keep trying to pass. And that is, my friends, is the reason why we fight against you so intensely and so hardly, because we don't want to be victims. We want to be able to defend ourselves, because we know that if you rely on the government, in particular a leftist, out of control government, who's more interested in protecting spotted owl and fish than protecting people, I would rather be responsible for protecting myself. So thanks, but no thanks. All right, folks, that's going to be it for today's Coffee with Craig. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please remember to like and share these videos. Remember to tell your friends about the Firearms Policy Coalition. We are the home in the fight for civil rights. Got to use them or you're going to lose them. Take care.
If you like our videos, follow, subscribe, like, and share.